Hello. Good afternoon to everyone connected. Today, we will have a presentation on Agroportal, which is a registry of ontologies by Dr. Jonquet. Clément is senior researcher at INRAe, which is the National Research Institute on Agronomy and Environment in France. He belongs to the MISTEA research unit on mathematics, informatics, and statistics. And he's also associate researcher at the University of Montpellier in the LIRM laboratory, which focuses on informatics, robotics, and microelectronics. So he was for 6 years around in the Stanford Center for Biomedical Informatics Research. And then he has 15 years of experience in ontologies and semantic web research. So Clément is the leader of the Agroportal initiative, and we thought very interesting for him to present us what is Agroportal and also what are the features that are bringing added value to our ontologies. So Clément, the floor is yours.
My microphone is still on, I believe, and
I can hear you. Very
yeah.
good.
And Elizabeth, can you just confirm me the amount of time we have in front of us, just as a group right now, and with me presenting and then question?
Normally, I booked an hour, so you have, if you like, 15 minutes, 20, if you like, and after we can talk with the audience.
Okay, I say that because I'm have a bunch of slides that I make available, but then the idea is also to present the resource and then open discussion, and maybe I came back on some of the slides. Just took me a minute. It took me a minute to open the list of attendees, and now I see it. So I recognize a couple of names, but I want to say hello everyone, and my name is Clément Jonquet. Thank you, Elizabeth, for introducing me and having me in the presentation of the community of practice. So as said, I'm leading that Agroportal project for about 6-7 years now, and today I'm quite excited about going back to also Elizabeth's group and the CG for talking about Agroportal, because it was one of our leading use case you will see in the presentation. So I should be able to see the slide on. I should be able to see questions if there is any, but just in case you ping me if I don't see anything on the screen.
Yeah, don't worry. Usually, Clément, we ask the speaker to present for the time, and then people can either write questions in the chat or also raise hand, because we are.
I will open the chat after the talk.
So don't worry, I will monitor that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you guys know about the dealing with ontologies, and some of those slides are kind of posing the context of. So when you deal with ontologies, they are spread out in different formats, different sizes, with different structures, and they are using a variety of representation languages from RDF schema to OWL or SCOS, and they are overlapping all over. Those are examples from the biomedical world, and those problems when dealing with ontologies are also our motivation for us in developing services to facilitate their use. This morning I was also again on the CGIAR website seeing the recommended ontologies. So all of the ones there also show you the diversity of the ontologies, and when you work with ontologies, it will defend with such amount of ontologies, then it will make sense to share them in a common resource and work with them at a general unified level. So I played a little bit the exercise of looking at the ones that are included in Agroportal from the recommended one, and you see from the overlap of the ontologies that we have in Agroportal the meaning or the importance that such a community can have also for us on our side. so we'll come back to the listing, but our motivation when we're developing ontology repositories are kind of those following 5 questions. If you build an ontology, how do you let the world know? If you need an ontology, where do you go to get it? Or do you know whether an ontology is any good? That's a tricky question. And how do you find data resources that are relevant to the domain of the ontology? Usually the ontology repositories can help answering this kind. Or could you leverage your ontology to enable new science? Those are the overall question. Or can you use ontologies without managing them? And that's kind of the reason why we are developing ontology repositories, because we believe they help answering these scenarios where someone wants to do something with several ontologies at the same time. And a couple of years ago, I started branding about the fact that ontology repositories will make ontologies fair, arguing the fact that by having ontology repositories, we make them more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And the screenshots that I'm using here are coming from Agroportal. I will illustrate some of the functionalities of the platform on example coming from the CGIAR ontologies. So overall, the impact of working with ontologies can be important. I mean, we all know about the notion of link open data, and about a few years ago, we ended up with that huge amount of data released as open data on the web using RDF and using semantic web standard. And that red bulb on that cloud used to come from the NCBio bioportal in 2013. And eventually we wanted to have such an impact in the agronomy, agricultural, or food and environmental sciences field with the project Agroportal. So it's also for a person like me, like a researcher in computer science, a context for interesting challenges and questions related to semantic webs and ontologies. The fact of dealing with metadata, multilinguality, ontology alignment. That is kind of the subject of my research in Montpellier, and the subject on which I develop a research program for now more or less 10, 12 years. So, well, we built that resource about 7 years ago now, a vocabulary and ontology repository for agronomy. So the word I use on my side is a repository, not a registry or library, or because that's the term we originally wanted to put forward, and the notion that we will be the place where ontology files can be shared and then served, by comparison to a library or registry where the file will be maybe stored only, or only the metadata for the content of this ontology will be available. What characterizes an ontology repository in our definition is the fact of serving the content of those ontologies. So we do provide services. And so the key vision behind Agroportal fits in one slide. We wanted to develop and support a reference ontology repository with a primary focus on agronomy and the close related domains. We wanted to kind of rebuild on something already existing. I will explain a little bit the fact that our baseline was the NCBio bioportal. That was already something very well known in the community. And the idea was to enable straightforward use of the agronomic related ontologies with respecting the requirements and specificity of this community, and making something fully compliant with the semantic web technology and vision, but also enable new science in this field. And so we released the portal. So I'm showing this slide quite often. I'm updating the screenshot from time to time with the new ontologies, but also the numbers here. We have now 147 ontologies, which is the numbers that have been growing. You'll see that in a couple of slides for a few years. But we still have in our list of candidates something like 110 candidates, and it's a list that I maintain for over 5 years now. And every time we had new ontologies in the portal, we realized that the numbers of candidates still the same, because we actually end up adding new candidates also. So it means that it's a very moving domain, and there are more and more ontologies that we discover or that are produced by the community in this domain. So on the left, you have the set of services or applications or features that the Agroportal as an ontology repository will provide to the users. They come through, of course, publish, search, download semantic resources of different kind. I usually use the term ontology, but we do cover vocabularies, terminology, taxonomy, things like that. We can browse, visualize. We have different ways of annotating or reviewing those things. We deal with the version of the file. We have an annotator service or a recommender service. We can deal with mappings. We can deal with the project relevant to the ontologies. So I will illustrate some of these features. Overall, I wanted to recall on an inheritance that will come from the NCBio Bioportal project that was well known in the community, that will be based exactly the same, in the same way on a set of services for ontology, for mappings between ontology, but also for UI and widgets that you can include in your application. For annotations, it means the ability of receiving text data and annotating that text data with ontology terms. And that's not enabled anymore in Agroportal, not in Bioportal anymore, but we originally had a service to access data directly from the Bioportal. Well, that inheritance is important because we are now getting organized in the Agroportal side, but also with the colleagues on the Bioportal side and others in something that we call the Ontoportal Alliance, in which we develop different portals for different community, including Agroportal, or you've just seen the portal that is called MedPortal developed in China, or more recently LifeWatch ERIC, which is the infrastructure for ecology and biodiversity data in Europe, has developed a portal called Agroportal. And the family is growing with people in the material domain, industry, and in a couple of years, we'll have also something in the earth science domain. So we are also positioning ourselves in that vision that by sharing a technology, by sharing resources, we can also focus on community-specific needs and also advance more the resources. So I took from my drawer the very first presentation that I did on Agroportal about in June 2015. You can see on that slide that Elizabeth was already on the name there, and Biodiversity International was also associated because INRAe, IRD, Biodiversity were kind of the leading projects that were kind of pushing also for the creation of an instance, a dedicated instance of what we used to call at that time Bioportal, but for agronomy ontologies. And so it was originally a proposition. Then we had 5 original driving agronomic use cases. Biodiversity was one of them, with the crop ontology project that produced a lot of specific vocabularies to describe threats for every crop, but also INRAe, for example, was very much interested in having a place where all of the scientists at INRAe will find their ontologies and vocabularies. Other initiatives, we were also associated to other initiatives such as RDA, the Wheat Data Interoperability Working Group, in which I know some of you were also involved, and other projects. So those projects end up being associated to what I call the community publication of Agroportal. It was really important for us to demonstrate that the project was led from scratch by a few scenarios that will guide the project from the very beginning, but then those scenarios have lived a little bit on their side, and we have also been led by other programs and other groups, but still it's very important to mention that origin. So the community have been growing, the interest, so the numbers of ontologies in Agroportal have been augmenting from different working group, the agri-semantics working group, GoFair initiatives. I can mention a few hackathons that we organize, or the national D2CAP project in France that I'm leading, that I would say maybe a word about. And more recently, I'm super excited about being involved in 2 projects in the EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud roadmap. One of them is called Fair Impact, and I'm leading the work package on ontologies and metadata with the vision of pushing for technologies, shared technology and shared tools for ontology management. So just wanted to recall something that I call the Agroportal model, the vision, or what the way we deal with ontologies differently with difference to other communities or groups that are editing or manipulating ontologies. So we do adopt an open approach where user can upload themselves, and with an editorial line that is quite, I will say, relaxed. We are a portal where we want resources that are related to the use of agri-food, but we don't prevent or block any resources to be uploaded. We let the community, the science do its job there with peer review and comments and reputations and references and things like that. So that's not our job to select the ontologies that are displayed. I took really an open model for that. And we will load at the beginning many ontologies, but now that the platform is more used or more known, the developers will most of the time upload their ontologies and we'll be in touch with them. We do curation of the metadata, but we don't deal with the data. I mean, the data is the property, what I mean by the data is the content of the ontologies. This is the property of the users. And we customize the ontology repository to address our community needs, but we try in doing that to keep a level of genericity in those actions. And of course, we use the portal to do science in informatics, in the fields of semantics, annotation, metadata, but also in the application domain underlying or for which the ontologies are being used. That's why the reason why I'm working at INRAe with this topic now. So some example of the ontologies we have in Agroportal. That slide is a little bit historical, but you'll see many of them. But we have some of the reference ontologies for plants, some of the ontologies you're super familiar with from the crop ontology project, but also reference vocabulary such as agrovark or the Thesaurus, the food ontology and things like that. I will demonstrate a little bit with some of the features that I prepare or some of the example, but you can browse and select ontologies. So the vision behind the project is to help people find and select the ontologies they want to use, and it could be one ontology, it could be several ontologies. In the case it's several ontologies, then we feel the platform address a need by offering a unified access to those ontologies. In the case it's one unique ontology, then the users can use our portal to access the ontology, but can also simply download the file and do something locally. But we do recognize ourselves a little bit more in the scenarios where people have to deal with multiple ontologies. So on Agroportal, we have categorized ontologies following one of FAO categorization that you have here on the left. And so a lot of resources are related to, for example, animal science, agricultural research, technology and engineering, or of course the phenotypes and traits because of the crop ontology project too. And we have organized, I'm trying to illustrate also with some of the crop ontology or CGIAR ontology in the next slide. So for example, we know that communities are super important for the project. So we've been able to organize ontologies by group. And for example, the crop ontology was one original group in Agroportal, and for each ontologies in that group, then we'll be able to kind of leverage or harmonize the services and even provide what we call a slice. If you go to a slice, for example, the crop.agroportal.lium.fr, a certain community can work only with a subset of ontologies that are available in the portal. It's a pre-selected group that we set up on our side, working with, for example, the crop ontology project in that case. But that helps, then allows users to deal only with the ontologies that they are interested in a certain group. That customization can be done also at the personal level, but most of the time we do it at the group level like that. The key idea is if a community show up and say, oh, I want to deal only with the 20 ontologies that are recommended by the CG and not the other ones, because otherwise it's going to be too complex for me, then we can set up a slice on Agroportal that will allow someone to have all the services, all of the features available in Agroportal restricted for this list of ontology. And we do think that's an important functionality. So that slide is a little loaded, but no worries. I'm just wanted to mention the fact that we are in line with the Ontoportal technology, so the generic technology that I mentioned a few minutes ago, developing Ontoportal and ontology repositories in multiple domains. But we also customize the things on our side. We have implemented many features for about the last 5 or 6 years. And they go from the customization of the UI or of the interface, from the dealing with the language, dealing with a new metadata model, the annotator tool that we have enhanced, mappings that we have enhanced, SCOS support. SCOS is being a standard that is super important in the agronomy community. We have done also some effort on that. More recently, we work on fairness assessment of resources. I told you an example of that, but we also deal with instances or other aspect like that. So those are a little bit the keywords on which we have added features or functionalities for those of you that are comfortable, that are already pretty much aware of, for example, Bioportal. So basically, we have a few demonstrations of some of those features here in Agroportal. The site can be accessed live, of course. You guys can have a look in parallel. But if you will go to Agroportal and search, for example, for leaf area index, you'll find all of the through a search index, all of the concepts in the ontologies that we host that will have that term. For example, Agroportal thesaurus, but also the specific crop ontology. And when a term is being reused by another ontology, you see you have also the reuse that are explicitly mentioned by the portal like that. So here we see that the agronomy ontology, for example, reused the leaf area index term coming from the trait ontology just above. We also offer those small widgets and UI things that helps you design your systems where you can deal only with text data, and have those autocomplete forms that helps you grab a URI, grab a concept in the back of your HTML form when you deal with that. And we believe it's super important when someone designs an operation, an information system, to actually from scratch, from the very beginning, grab the corresponding URI of a concept or term in an ontology. So we have different features that I'm sure you're familiar with, coming from browsing an ontology tree on the left, getting information about a specific class. So for example, here, the agronomy ontology showing the leaf area index, a term that has been imported from the trait ontology in that ontology. We do also display the hierarchy with a UI and things like that. We can also illustrate more. We have several community-based functionalities that helps to capture notes, mappings, reactions from the community. Without saying they have been super successful, we are kind of reinventing a little bit all of that with the Ontoportal people now, trying to connect that more to GitHub. And so those features are supposed to evolve. We are very interested in feedback from communities and driving communities to work on that. I know the crop ontology, for example, has very clear governance in terms of terms addition, terms proposal, and things like that. And those are the things we would like to be able to facilitate, maybe with those community-based functionalities. I'll pass on that, but on that slide, I just want to recall a little bit that behind Agroportal, we have historically implemented a huge, very important or brand new metadata model. I will just illustrate what does it mean. That's the name of the model called MOD 1.4, and we are now moving to a newer version in the context of a working group. But that model basically allows us to say a lot of things about ontologies inside the portal. We have a lot of metadata fields, and that's why we do curation, because we have so many metadata fields, so many that we want to facilitate their use and then harmonize their use in the ontology in the repository. And they'll help us tell us things about a specific ontology. Like here, for example, you have an example on the ontobiotope ontology, and I will illustrate on agro on this following slide. But they will also tell us things about many ontologies in the portal. So for example, if I illustrate on agro, okay, got it, sorry. So the animation was not perfect here, but basically you have a bunch of information about the agronomy ontology, the basic metadata, the additional metadata that we have added in our model. And we are working to improve that UI, but we can say things about metrics. We can now have that fairness assessment score that you see on the left and on the right. We also have those buttons that we try to educate people to reuse, called Get My Metadata, where all the metadata that have been captured in the record on Agroportal side can be pulled back and reintroduced in the ontology file if possible. We have logos, visits, statistics on visits, image that can illustrate the ontologies, but also the inclusion of the ontology in other catalogs. We know that it's important for ontologies to be present in several catalogs. So we do include also the links to other catalogs, and we do use that information that an ontology is stored in several catalogs when we do, for example, fairness assessment. And of course, we also have the versionings and things like that. That's kind of very important for our users to have a place somewhere where all of the ontologies are being all of the version, the public version of the ontologies are maintained and up to date. The landscape page was built a few years ago to kind of, based on that metadata model, trying to show or explain, shows things about the community, the set of ontologies in our portal. So that landscape page was kind of using the metadata that we fill in for each ontologies, but the other way around, looking at all of the ontologies together. So we'll be able to produce metrics and statistics and chart on our ontologies, showing, for example, the formats that are the most used, the size, the language that are used, or, for example, the information about the community. Here you see, for example, in the most mentioned people and contact, creator, contributor, or curator, you see the crop ontology out there, which is the name that comes for all of the crop ontology in Agroportal, but also other people contributing to the community. And we can also, with this model, capture the relationships between the ontology at the metadata level. So, for example, I like this slide because it shows exactly all the trait ontology has been aligned explicitly to all of the crop ontology in the crop ontology project, and that star shapes that the system creates. And we'll see, for example, when there are other ontologies like soy, that's an ontology related to soy, but outside of the crop ontology project, then that ontology will also be in the loop because of that ecosystem being driven, being facilitated by the portal. Recently, I know this is a subject of importance. We've been developing a fairness assessment evaluator, or tool that we call OFAIR. It's more than a tool, actually. It's a methodology that we have implemented, that we have conceived, and with 61 questions helping to answer if an ontology is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that methodology has been partially implemented in Agroportal, and now we have a UI that helps us find out for a certain ontology or group of ontology how much they respect the FAIR principle, following the methodology, of course, and all of that is being published. For example, the fairness assessment result for all the ontologies in the crop ontology project can be produced on the landscape page. If I select all of the crop ontology project here, I will have a synthesis of all of the level of fairness, and I will have a feedback question by question questionnaire aspect by aspect that will help also an ontology developer like Marie in the group, or folks like you guys, find out what are the important aspects for being fair that the ontology repository puts forward, or show you that you could decide or not to respect. We have also historical services that have been very important in our for Agroportal, like, for example, the annotator. The annotator is a service that will take text and identify the ontology concept in this text. So here I was illustrating with plant ontology and the trait ontology. I have this slide that I like much, that we're showing a set of cassava traits that will come from a typical Excel file, and those traits being captured as text can be sent to the annotator with the appropriate ontology, for example, the cassava ontology in Agroportal, and the terms will be identified and then can be then used to structure the data that was originally captured in an Excel spreadsheet. We do have that recommender service that is kind of also based on the annotator and helps find out the users, help them for given data, identify which ontologies are relevant for their data. And we also work on a bunch of other features. I have included here a few of them related to, for example, alignment. The idea that when you deal with several ontologies, then you have to deal with the fact that they overlap and that you want to do something with that overlapping. And but I'm not going to describe these, but we work on multiple aspects of mappings inside the mapping repository, including the fact of validating, extracting, storing, and representing those mappings, which is a job that is mostly not done by any tool available out there. We know that the communities, for example, the Obo people, are also relying very much on term reuse, overlapping ontologies, and mapping them all together. So we've made several studies out of that. This is a result of a study we did a couple of years ago showing the interconnections of ontologies inside Agroportal. Eventually, we hope that study will be, that was a one-off, will be available every regularly in Agroportal. If I come back to the leaf area example, this time here for AgroVoc, the fact that mappings are also stored in the mapping repository here you visualize the fact that this concept here has been aligned to a bunch of other concepts with the same name in each of the crop ontologies. So if I will develop that diagram here on the right, I will see that the leaf area concept identified in AgroVoc is explicitly linked by the portal to the other occurrence of such a terms in other ontologies, and that's super important. We cannot call them directly mapping, but because they are not necessarily mappings, but at least the lexical matches like that are identified and very useful for a user to find out the interrelation of his ontology or her ontology with others. I wanted to mention that all of that, the fact of building Agroportal is driven by the fact of offering a service, means that the tools are here to be used, the application is here to be used, to be embedded in a program through the web service API or the Sparkle endpoints. It's kind of crucial also that for one of the services we offer to the community is a dedicated Sparkle endpoint for the ontologies that are being hosted there. And side effect of project like what we are doing, for example, some of the resources that are harvested in Agroportal are also, for example, harvested by registries like fair sharing, for example, that I call metadata registries, because they only store not the content but the metadata about the ontologies. Fair sharing, for example, has implemented a wrapper to grab the content from Agroportal, as it used to do with Agroportal in the past. I just wanted to include 3 slides to give you the context in which now we work on Agroportal. I have only those 3 slides and I'm finishing. I just wanted to give you the names of those projects because it's important to realize a little bit the context in what we are doing this. So we have this project called G2CAB for Data to Knowledge in Agronomy and Biodiversity. It's a national funded project, quite a big one with many partners that goes from until 2023. And the key mission of that project was to build knowledge graph, of course, based on ontologies and vocabularies in the area, driven by agronomy, agriculture, biodiversity use cases. And that project, I'm the leader on that project. I'm still coordinating that for the next 2 years. I mentioned the Ontoportal Alliance, and I wanted to show you the diagrams because it's important to realize that Agroportal is not done by himself on his side, but really part now as a group of community in which we find, of course, Bioportal as the most successful ontology repository in the biomedical domain and for multiple areas. But we are scaling up to different levels. We are doing this with different partners, also at the level of EOSC, as I mentioned previously. So the feedback that we are getting from a community like you will also be useful for people in different communities, and vice versa. The feedback from communities, for example, in the industry or material domain, can be useful for people in the agronomy community. The last one is the Fair Impact project that I mentioned. Here is a little presentation of the work package 4 that I'm supervising, in which we will say we will develop, and that's a project that I started 3 months ago, but we argue on the fact that we will develop and foster the uptake of semantic framework for the governance, the creation, the mapping, the sharing, the reuse, and the fairness assessment and interoperability of semantic artifact being wider terms for ontologies, vocabularies, terminology, etc. And so that's really our vision behind Fair Impact. On this note, I just wanted to say a closing sentence. I mean, I haven't just wanted to say that Agroportal is a project that is still very young, but that is still also being driven by different use cases and different partners. So we are super excited also to have feedback from other users in the community, plugging in our APIs and our features, functionalities in new systems. And we have many more features that I haven't introduced there that I can explain or demonstrate offline with some of you if you're interested. All of that has been also published for sure, and it's important. So I'm very keen in helping also the CGIAR communities in making their ontologies available or shareable, and then reaching out to another use of possible use with ontology repositories such as Agroportal. On this note, I will finish here and take questions.
Thank you, Clément. Thank you very much for this thorough presentation of Agroportal and the features the portal is bringing to the ontology. I have some questions also, but I think what you stressed was important to indicate that ontology is being published in such registry is made available with a set of metadata that really identifies and give attribution to the ontology. That's an important part, I think, for us, because we are always looking at getting good metadata, solid metadata. So I have questions, but I would like first to give the floor to our colleagues. So I don't see any hand raised. I have a question in the question and answer chat by Marie-Angélique. So I don't know, Marie, if you prefer to open your mic, if you can, I don't know. Otherwise, the question of Marie is, do you think it is a good thing to see the number of ontology related to agriculture grow that much? Is it helping data interoperability? You can see the Q&A.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, we don't want to advertise and propagate the use of ontologies and vocabularies without accepting the consequences of that advocating. The other way around. Otherwise, we'll be walking on an edge that will be super small. Oh, you want to use, or we suggest you use ontologies, but we suggest you don't create new ones. So at the end of the day, I think that will be a hard line. I know your concern behind the question also in terms of interoperability, in terms of making data, I mean, making the picture a little harder because many resources will be there. What I have observed in building Agroportal over the last years is the diversity of the resources that are being produced there. Originally, I mean, you guys are familiar with the wheat situation when we started developing Agroportal. Then several ontologies related to wheat phenotypes were put there, and then the discussion between the scientists really starts. So we have observed that also, for example, with a couple of other scenarios like animal traits or the soil, but not that much too. So it means that by that community of that list of ontologies growing means also that the scope, the numbers of domain in which people are using it becomes bigger. So that should not be that should not scare us too much. And also, I want to claim the fact that with Agroportal, we also try to play that role of being a place where someone will do state of the art and find the resources that are relevant for a certain subject. So if I do find an ontology that was published 5 years ago in a file somewhere in a paper, and I think it's relevant, not because it's going to be reused, but because it's still used or it's still available, but because it's part of the scientific history in a domain, then I think it deserves a little spot in Agroportal. It's our job after that to make a difference between the reference ontology or the one that the communities wants to put forward and the one that are more historical, but I think it's important to deserve that. And one final type of ontology that we have also that deserve a lot of presence, but they are not that important because of in terms of facilitating interoperability, those are application ontologies. And I think also that Agroportal is a place where sometimes application ontology are being uploaded there, means that an ontology that has been developed for a specific application, which doesn't mean that ontology can probably not be reused like that because it's an application ontology driven by a specific application, but which still means that it's part of the state of the art and that the community have to be aware that the resources are here and they could be useful one day in another application or in another domain.
Yeah, thank you, Clément. And I think, yeah, what I wanted to, because you showed that we have graphical ways of seeing the overlapping or the interconnection between ontologies. So, and we are developing ontologies. We have a socioeconomic ontology. I see Sonu is connected. We have another one that we are developing particularly for small-scale fisheries. So I was wondering if we should look at first Agroportal in a sense to see what are the themes where the ontologies exist and check what are the existing overlap between our ontology and their ontology for using your graphical visualization? And would you have a kind of also, I would say, role to help us connecting with the existing ontology that could be of interest? For example, we know we have the fish ontology available on Agroportal, but when we checked, it was mainly for taxonomy, classification of fish. So this was not addressing our needs for small-scale fisheries and aquaculture. But could Agroportal be a resource to at least identify what exists and stimulate collaboration between communities, in your sense?
So we do fulfill that role, at least at the basic syntactic level, with the Loom mapping algorithm that is executed in Agroportal, and that's the term overlap. So a basic service that a user has is, oh, I can upload my ontology, and if my ontology is not public yet, I can upload that as a private ontology because I may not want that the community see it for the moment, and I will have a report on the overlapping of my ontology with the others, and from that report I can do something. I mean, I can decide if I decide to align myself to the one that are reference or important thesaurus or ontologies in the domain. I can decide if I will plug in terms from those ontologies rather than describing them myself. And then at least I have the metadata information that tells me who's the creator, the contributor, and who to contact to if I want to collaborate. And our role at Agroportal is kind of more or less facilitating those scenarios. We are not taking over, as I explained with the Agroportal model, the position of taking a decision on what's good or what's bad, but we provide the information to the scientists, and then the scientists reach out to each others or make their choices. I don't claim. I mean, I hope we facilitate the situation by offering such services, but still we have the chicken and eggs problem where we probably also by facilitating the fact of sharing and developing ontologies, then we also probably accelerate the amount of content and then make the problem bigger at a certain level. But the question is, would that situation be the case without us? And that's hard to say.
Thank you, Clément. So Sunho, you have a question. I'm not sure you can open your mic. Can you? Or I think it would be much better if you could say your question, but I don't know. Are you? No, okay, you cannot. Okay, so Clément, I will read the second question from Sunho Kim from IFPRI. Sunho is leading the development of the socioeconomic ontology for CGIAR. So thank you so much for the excellent presentation. Perhaps you can read it, but I don't know. I'm so excited to know more about Agroportal. One question is about the knowledge graph with the graph machine learnings. I would like to know more about your plan to use existing graph machine learning on the knowledge graph associated with agro-ontology. I'm using Neo4j as a knowledge graph database to apply graph machine learning. Converting the old version of the ontology to Neo4j compatible version is not an easy task. Do you plan to build a feature inside the Agroportal to apply the graph machine learning algorithms to the knowledge graph from the ontology the community has been building? Any plans?
Yeah, okay, so I can provide a few. Hopefully I can read this one because that's a loaded question with several aspects. I was not necessarily expecting such a precise and technical question, but it will allow me to give a little technical detail, but that also illustrates that you guys are also very well connected to the backend technology and things like that. So we are building a knowledge graph with Agroportal by connecting and putting all those resources together. We are building a knowledge graph at the very essence of this term, let's say an RDF knowledge graph, because all our data is stored natively in RDF. We do believe it's important to kind of keep that vision of offering the data as RDF, because otherwise it's kind of hard to advocate on the fact of building on application and tools and science using ontologies if on our side we cannot apply and develop a system based on those same technologies. So for example, the switch from an RDF backend to a Neo4j property graph backend has been one of the choice, for example, of the ontology lookup service designed by EBIOLS. And they were like super more faster with that for some of their features. They don't offer the same functionality than us, but in a sense, I have the feeling that it's kind of a little bit cheating of saying, oh, we want to encourage people to deal with ontologies without dealing with ontologies ourselves in the backend of our software. So in parallel of that, or that being said, I said also at the beginning of the presentation that we are also using the context of Agroportal in my lab to do research in computer science domain, and dealing with knowledge graph and Neo4j and property graph technology is an important topic. We have someone in my team at the University of Montpellier, where I'm associated, specialized in the use of property graph to do these kind of things and do back and forth trips from RDF to Neo4j, because Neo4j is also super appropriate for some representations. And the last aspect of the question was on graph machine learning. Then we do have a PhD project on that, so I will try maybe to rephrase that, but we have the fact of representing the data in knowledge graph has been an interesting aspect for many community in the machine learning community, and they apply what they call things and techniques, for example, like knowledge graph embeddings, where you will take the graph and put that into embeddings, vectors that you can apply statistical methods on, a little bit like what you would do with image when you do deep learning and things like that. So we have a PhD program investigating the use of knowledge graph embeddings, and so machine learning hybrid approach between a symbolic AI and a machine learning, more statistical AI. This is on the PhD side for the moment, and it hasn't been converted to any feature or any functionality in the context of Agroportal. So I will not say that we will offer tomorrow some functionalities that will say, look, if you put your ontology in Agroportal, then you join an important knowledge graph, and all of the model, for example, a machine learning model that we have pre-compute will be updated with your ontology, and then you'll be able to do these and these. That's not the topic right now. That's not where we are. But eventually, I mean, with the adoption of others and the help of different communities, we can go through all this kind of action.
Yeah. Thank you, Clément. Sunho, for information, I managed to give you, I think, the possibility to activate your mic if you wish. I think that what you mentioned about the PhD, and perhaps we will invite you later on to present the result of this approach anyway. So that will be of interest to the community. So another question I have on my side. Okay, so you know that Marie is online also, so she knows. We have always the ambition to be compliant to the Obofoundry criteria. So at least it makes from our effort something of reference. So my first question is, are you checking at least a certain amount of those criteria when someone uploads an ontology, or is it fully open? And my second question is, if we want to submit, for example, one of our draft ontology, we have, I don't know, the socioeconomic, the fish, or anything else, what is the process we should do, and what information should we provide to you?
Okay, so first, with respect to the verification or for example, of some of the principle, so it's important to realize we come after the Obofoundry work, for example. So the inclusion of an ontology in the Obofoundry is supposed to already be the mandate or the credit that ontology respects the Obofoundry principles. So we come after that, and when we take an ontology and put it in Agroportal or some we don't double check anything, so we don't encourage.
You're muted suddenly, Clément. Clément, we can't hear you. I don't know what happened. Did you mute? Okay, you're back.
Oh, sorry. So what we like to have in the future, assuming that the ontology design steps have been done, including adhering, respecting the OBO foundry principle, then we are thinking about features such as, oh, this is a profile that you should respect, for example, the OBO foundry profile, and we have a tool to validate that. This is a profile, for example, for adhering to the INRAe standard when INRAe is pushing for developing vocabularies in its domain. And our job will be to construct the mechanism, the machinery for those profiles to be checked automatically and the report being published or sent back to the users. But we'll try to keep that vision where it's not because an ontology will not respect a certain profile that it doesn't mean that it means to be shared. Yeah, that's the philosophy. But we know the communities are very eager of getting feedback on the way they design ontologies. And so it's always a trade-off in finding the person who wants to be as much constrained that they can because they want to follow and they have a lot of time to do that. And maybe the PhD project that is also kind of pushed by a certain task and will provide a resource that has some value but haven't respected some of the standard. The level of reuse will be different also from in between those two resources, two ontologies.
Okay, so what I understand is even if we have an ontology that is still a beta version, for example, we could decide to wait for being more advanced and be compliant to OBO foundry, but we could also submit it to Agroportal with probably the indication that it's a beta version and it's not yet compliant, for example. So at least people finding the ontology on your Agroportal could decide what to do with that.
So in that case, we can play a role. We can also support groups that are sharing ontologies with certain members of their group that are not developers of that ontology, but who wants to see them. So with the fact that private ontology can be stored in the portal, and we can afterward also facilitate the comparison with other ontologies in the portal, so that the user will find out that if he wants to follow standard, the OBO foundry principle, then it will be better for the long-term support and reuse of its ontology, and we'll do that. But it's really important that we have an environment also in which we can encompass with the diversity of the multiple ontology project. Meaning, developing an ontology does not always mean developing the best ontology for that domain or a reference ontology for that domain. But it doesn't mean that if you don't do that, you don't do any science. We also put ourselves in an open science vision where any artifacts, any resource that is being produced by the communities has to be available, at least to be identified as a piece of history in the scientific process.
Apologize for the cell phone. Usually I don't have it with me. It was a surprise. Sorry for that. Thank you, Clément, for this detailed answer. And I think we can also discuss further as a community how to proceed with any submission of our ontologies. Any other? I don't see any other question in the Q&A window. So, and I don't see any hands. No hand raised. So I don't know. I think it was a very good webinar. We recorded it, so at least colleagues who couldn't be with us because they are in another time zone, particularly the Asian countries, can have an opportunity to watch it because we'll share it. And I think that's we are done. So thank you very much, Clément, for your time and your very nice slides. And perhaps we can keep the recording, but if you can share also the slides, it's sometimes easier to watch slides than watch a full video. So if you can share that with us. I
will make the PDF available afterward, yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much. And so I wish all our attendees a very nice day or evening, depending where you are. And if you have other questions, the email of Clément is on the slide, so you can directly contact him, or we can invite Clément for follow-up discussions in our meetings. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone, and thanks again for the opportunity to present.
Nice, thank you. Bon, bah voilà.
Voilà. Bon, bah super. People, yeah, Valerio is still around. I'm closing the
Il y a encore
window.
Valentina qui est là. Il y a quelques
And
personnes.
okay.
So,